Chapter 1. From Homeland to Uncertainty. When home becomes a memory instead of a place, the journey begins. Long before chaos swept through the streets of Baghdad and fear became currency in daily life, Fernando was just a boy running through the dusty alleyways of Iraq, his heart full of dreams, his future unwritten. Born into an Assyrian family in a land known as the cradle of civilization, Fernando grew up surrounded by ancient beauty and simmering tension. Iraq, with its golden mosques, bustling markets, and deep-rooted culture, was more than just a country, it was the heartbeat of his identity. But behind the songs of tradition and the scent of family dinners, something darker brewed in the background. By the late 1990s, the stability his parents had once known began to vanish. Sanctions, war drums, and whispers of conflict swept through their city like a dust storm that never settled. People were disappearing. Fear hung in the air like smoke. And for Fernando's parents, who held tight to their children each night and prayed that tomorrow wouldn't bring sirens or sorrow, the message was clear: this is no place to raise a future. So in the year 2000, with nothing but courage and conviction, Fernando's family left everything behind: ancestral land, friendships, memories, to start over in a foreign place, Jordan. But Jordan was no promised land, it was survival. Stripped of their status and seen as outsiders, Fernando's family faced 9 years of quiet suffering. His parents couldn't find work. The boys, Fernando, his 2 younger brothers, were thrown into public schools where they were ignored, judged, and alone. They didn't speak the local dialect fluently. They didn't wear the right clothes. Every day was a battle, not against bombs, but against isolation. Still, they endured. And just when life felt like a long tunnel with no light at the end, a rare moment of joy came into view. In 2005, an invitation arrived. Fernando's beloved uncle was getting married back in Iraq. It was dangerous, yes, but it was family. And family, no matter how distant or endangered, was everything. So the decision was made. Bags were packed, a taxi was arranged. The road from Jordan to Iraq stretched before them like a path between 2 lives, the one they fled and the one they might return to, just for a moment. But what lay beyond that border was not what they expected. Not even close. What started as a celebration quickly spiraled into a life-threatening encounter, one that would change everything forever. Stay tuned for part 2, where Fernando's journey takes a chilling turn, when family joy collides with terror in the unguarded deserts of Iraq. You won't want to miss what happens next.
Sometimes the road home is the most dangerous one. The taxi rolled forward, tires cutting through the dust of a desolate stretch between Jordan and Iraq. The sun was punishing. The heat pressed through the windows like a warning. But Fernando and his family had their hearts set on one thing: reunion. This was meant to be a moment of joy, a wedding, a celebration. A reminder that family still existed, that not everything had been lost. But destiny had other plans. As the cab crossed into Iraqi soil, the silence in the car grew heavier. Something felt off. The once familiar terrain now seemed haunted. Desert towns passed like ghost villages, lifeless and watching. And then it happened. A sudden stopping. A wall of men with rifles, their own faces covered, voices sharp. The desert was no longer empty. Fernando's heart pounded as the car was surrounded. The driver froze, his parents, hands trembling, shielded the boys with their arms. The terrorists didn't ask questions, they didn't need to. They ordered the family out, took their passports, their bags, their dignity. In that moment, the sand under Fernando's shoes felt like it might swallow him whole. The sun began to set. The wind grew colder. And just like that, they were abandoned. Stripped, threatened, and left to die in the middle of nowhere. Fernando was just a kid. But he could see the look in his father's eyes. This wasn't just fear, it was heartbreak. They began to walk. No sense of direction, no promise of survival, just faith. And then, a sound. A car. Dust kicked up behind it. It slowed. Inside was a family. A mother looked out the window and saw the shivering children, the helpless parents. She told her husband to stop. And in the middle of a land soaked with danger, they did something extraordinary. They opened their doors. That stranger, he gave Fernando's family water, food, shelter. He gave them hope when they had none left. and when night fell, he drove them all the way to their relative's home, refusing to take a single coin. Not because he had to, but because he chose to.
The final farewell to the wedding was over. The music had stopped. The house was quiet again. But this time, the silence felt heavier. We began packing our bags. Not because we wanted to leave, but because we had to. There was an unspoken understanding between all of us. This wasn't the Iraq we once knew, wasn't the home we remembered. And staying longer could mean risking everything. As we folded clothes and zipped up our suitcases, my heart felt heavier than anything I carried. We weren't just packing belongings, we were packing memories, and saying goodbye to a part of ourselves. At the front door, the hugs were tighter than ever. My grandmother held me like it was the last time. My uncles said, "Come back soon." But their eyes said something else, something more honest. They knew the truth. We all did. The car ride to the airport was silent. No one said a word, but our thoughts were loud. At the airport, people rushed past us checking in, boarding flights, making phone calls. But for us, time moved slowly. It felt like we were walking through fog. When the plane finally lifted off, I pressed my face to the window. Baghdad disappeared beneath the clouds. And so did a piece of me. We landed back in Jordan that night. Safe, but not home. We were back to being outsiders. Back to struggle, back to survival. That night, my family sat quietly in the living room. No TV, no distractions, just silence. And then my father pulled out a folder. Inside it were forms, applications, documents. My parents had made a decision. Couldn't keep living like this. We needed a new beginning, a real future, a real home. They had applied for refugee status in a country we'd only heard of, a place on the other side of the world, a place called Australia. We didn't know what would happen next. We didn't know how long it would take. But one thing was certain, our story wasn't over. We had just come back from Iraq, tired, broken, still shaken from what happened in the desert. But life doesn't wait. Not even for the broken. One Sunday morning, I walked into a church in Amman, not expecting anything, just looking for peace, just trying to breathe. And that's when I saw her. She walked in like a dream. Long black hair, a calm royal presence. She didn't look around. The world looked at her. I froze. I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe. Something inside me whispered, "That's her." But I didn't even know her name. She was sitting just a few rows ahead. Her dress was simple, but graceful. A high-ranking officer in the Jordanian army, you could feel the respect around them. They were untouchable. I watched her from a distance every Sunday. Same time, same seat, same feeling. I never spoke to her, not once. I was too shy, too afraid. What would I even say? I was a refugee. She was from power and wealth. We lived in two different worlds. At home, we couldn't afford bread some days. I shared clothes with my brothers. We used candles when the power was cut. How do you tell a girl like that? Did you think about her every night? But I kept coming, because seeing her gave me hope, even if I never said a word. I would draw her in my notebook and write stories about her in my head, and dreamed that maybe one day she might see me too. Life in Jordan was hard. Jobs were scarce. People judged us for being poor Iraqis. I was drowning in silence. She was the only thing that kept me afloat. Maybe someday I would talk to her. But I knew one thing. She had already changed me forever. Chapter 6. Stop and shop after everything that happened. After escaping Iraq, the wedding, the danger, the desert, I was back in Jordan, back to reality, back to struggle. We had no money, no support, no future in sight. I couldn't just sit there waiting, so I made a decision. I would work no matter what, no matter the pay, no matter the hours. I walked the streets of Amman, one shop after another, asking, begging, "Do you need help? I can clean, I can carry, I'll do anything." Most of them didn't even look me in the eye. Some laughed. Others said, "You're Iraqi, right? Sorry, no jobs for you." But one day I walked into a small supermarket. It was called Stop and Shop. It smelled like detergent and warm bread. There was dust on the shelves. The place looked like it was barely surviving, just like me. The owner stood behind the counter, reading a newspaper. He was older, serious, and didn't talk much. I introduced myself, told him I needed work, told him I didn't care about the pay, just give me something. He looked at me, long and hard. Then he said, "Be here tomorrow, 5 a.m., don't be late." I didn't even ask about the salary. I didn't care. I showed up the next day before sunrise. That job, it nearly broke me. 16 hours a day, every single day. No weekends, no holidays, just work. I swept the floor, stacked the shelves, cleaned out the freezers, carried crates twice my weight. By 10 a.m., my back would start hurting. By noon, I felt dizzy from hunger, and by 5 p.m., I still had hours left to go. But I kept going. Every blister, every cracked finger, every drop of sweat. It all meant one thing. Clothes. I had one goal, one dream. To save just enough to buy a decent shirt, a pair of clean pants, something, anything. So that one day, if I ever got the courage, I could walk up to her, that beautiful girl from the church, and not feel ashamed. She was still in my mind. Every day, every night, while I stocked cucumbers, I saw her face. While I mopped the floor, I imagined her voice. While I scrubbed the toilet, I dreamed of what it would be like to sit next to her and just talk, even once. She was the reason I didn't quit. She was the reason I pushed myself past exhaustion. People at the shop didn't know. But I was working for more than just money. I was working for hope. I was working to feel worthy of a girl I'd never spoken to. Stay tuned for part 7. When the heart works harder than the hands, something has to break.